Welcome back. The show is on record where every word matters right here on High Impact 102.1 FM. I am Vivian Oguche. And today we are taking a look at energy efficiency awareness in Nigeria. The focus is a step towards sustainability. And I'm being joined right now by an expert in this field. He is senior energy consultant and analyst, Dr. Wisdom Enang. Dr. Enang, thank you so much for being a part of the show this morning.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Good morning.
Good morning. So for starters, right, so that the man on the street, the woman in the market, the man in the market will understand what we are talking about. What is energy efficiency awareness?
I think in my mind, energy efficiency awareness is simply, the way that we look at energy utilization, first primarily to the man on the street to save costs, but on the broader spectrum to make sure that we balance our energy security, which involves the ensuring that, of course, the demand does not outweigh the supply, and then we can put affordability in check. And then to also make sure that we keep tabs with our environmental goals to make sure that we do not overpollute the environment. So that's essentially it. So the man on the street, it has to do with saving the cost in terms of the utility cost of the running their fuel engines. But to the environmentalists, it also means that we are more efficient in the way we look at the stewardship of our environmental goals, and we have a cleaner environment. And to the country and overall, it means that we have a reduction in the demand of, fuel or energy. At the same time, it is being utilized more efficiently, and that means that we do not have a situation where the price hike is artificial.
That's a very good answer. Now, let's talk about stewardship, because you said that's what it's about, stewardship. How well have we done so far as regards the environment and energy efficiency?
I think for me, right, the most important thing is to look at the drivers. For you to understand the stewardship and where we are on that, you have to look at the drivers. So different countries have had to be driven by different factors. In Nigeria, I can tell you that we were pushed by factors outside our control. We didn't have to jump on our own. And I'll tell you what the scenario would look like. If we had to jump on our own, that means we would have been carefully crafting a plan for energy transition, would have been carefully crafting a plan to onboard a lot of consumers to naturally change their behavior, even though price would not be a concern. As in, it wouldn't be the case where we create a price hike and then force consumers to say either you get onto the new fuel, either you learn to off your socket points that are not utilized, either you learn to reduce your energy consumption, or you have a situation where you're paying so much. So what we did was to increase all of that and create a kind of push effect on the consumers, and they had to learn quickly how to survive. And to survive, consumers have said, okay, we would have to utilize only energy that is absolutely necessary. So you see consumers very worried about, or apprehensive to say the least, if their maybe freezers are on and they're blocked and they don't have to be on, remain on, so the girls switch them off. That wasn't something you saw in the past. Even worried about light bulbs that don't have to be on, especially the people in band A, in the band A side of things. We also have a situation where people are very cautious even about where they go in terms of when they get fuel, like they plan their journeys. They have to go for example, from the mainland to the island. It is very, very possible that people now look at, okay, what do I have to do on the island? Are there a couple of activities I can just merge into one trip? I don't have to go multiple times. And this wasn't the case before.
Yeah.
So I think the whole price point has made people now really conscious, and people are more efficient in their planning. But people are becoming trip planners and looking at Uber was about sharing your vehicle space. So you were traveling somewhere to the island, and you needed a driver to take you, you needed someone to take you there, or you've got a car and then you've got an empty space, and rather than just travel empty, you can monetize it. So right now we're seeing people coming out with very clever ways to show even that efficiency actually reflects on their pricing. Whether it be using apps that allow you set your price points and say, okay, how much you're willing to pay, and then the driver says, okay, I'm willing to take that much, or people now forming themselves into groups and say, well, I'm going to the island. Is there anyone interested in joining me, so that we can share the fare? Instead of paying, say, 10,000 on the Uber app, you can pay 4,000 towards me putting fuel, and we'll still get there. So I see a lot of ingenious and very clever ways to maintain energy efficiency, and that wasn't something we saw previously, but it's something that has become like a natural adaptation for survival in Nigeria today.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That that lack mentality? I don't know, though. Do you see it that way?
No, I think it was always going to happen, and it was just, as I said, whether we were ready to jump on our own or be pushed. But I think it was a push option that we took. With the hike in energy prices, we had to be more efficient. And I think it's the same thing in the UK. I'll give you context. The UK has different tariff systems in the morning and in the evening period for most energy companies. And what you typically find is that people do a lot of boiling of the water. People do some cooking at night after 7 o'clock when the tariff system gets to the evening tariff.
Wow.
But during the morning hours, they tend to turn off a lot of things because the morning tariffs are more expensive. So you see that sort of, Darwin theory that talks about that, survival, the guys, the species that would survive are those that adapt to change. And so it's very, very, I think, normal for you to see people try to adapt, and they've done so in very clever ways. But the question then remains, how do we then, sort of deepen that adaptation of energy beyond the elites? Because at the moment, it's really the elite. If you look at the utility of gas, for example, in homes, it's still at about less than 10%. People, for the most part, still use firewood and other forms of energy that is not very clean. So how do you enable that shift? And that's going to be you balancing availability, accessibility, and affordability to allow them transition. Yes, the elites are transitioning because you have to look at the opportunity cost concept. Elites are saying PMS versus gas. That makes a lot of sense. The village lady is saying, firewood versus gas. And you can tell which is going to win because the firewood is by their side. They can easily get it from the bush. So it's going to be a lot for you to create the wider penetration of energy efficiency in the economy. It's not just about the elites, which are, by the way, just a few percentage of the population in Nigeria. It is about rolling a framework that means that even when you look at the supposedly cheaper form of energy for those people in the rural areas, that you can create a framework that allows them to appreciate and adapt a more cleaner form of energy like gas versus the firewood.
That's a very good answer. Now, you've talked about drivers, you've talked about stewardship and all of that. Now, this begs the question, what are the key challenges in implementing energy efficiency strategies in a developing economy like ours, Nigeria, really?
I think the first thing is efficiency. The first thing is just being able to get a supply of the cleaner form of energy. People are interested, right? But the supply is hampered by the fact that there's a lack of infrastructure. The supply is also hampered by the fact that the upfront cost of the cleaner energy itself. So we talk about, things like hybrid electric vehicles, the fuel cell technologies abroad. There are other forms of technologies abroad out there. But one of the things stopping us is the high cost of adaptation. Right now, a lot of those technologies are domiciled within the business and the government setting, not the private setting. The simple reason is because people are even struggling. So funding is a big one. The other one is advocacy and domestication of the technology itself. I'll start with domestication of the technology itself. if you don't domesticate that technology, you cannot take ownership of creating the standards to make sure that the people that are using this are safe.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously cannot enforce anything if you do not have the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Without the regulations, the investors that are coming are already very skeptical. They're thinking, how is this investment going to go? Let's say if a new regime comes on board, especially when they work their math and found out that the return on their investment all the way to a break-even period is going to take them beyond that particular regime. So they're going to be more skeptical and thinking to themselves, is this a very good investment proposition? And then when you step down, you're also looking at research and development. There is no way in the world you can take ownership of a technology and utilize it in a way that is going to solve the unique problem within your vicinity without having research and technological framework and development framework. It is very important. So those are some of the things that have come out of, and the fact is that we haven't done enough of the advocacy. I keep saying that, look, if we want to achieve this, it's not just creating, for example, presidential CNG initiative and let them run the entire show. These guys need to get to recruit partners that will help them advocate, right? Because a lot of people that even have the money are afraid of the safety incident. They're worried, is a safety incident an outlier condition that happens one in a few million people that adapt this technology, or is it just a commonplace, or is there something we do not know about this technology? There's this apprehensiveness about the adaptation, for example, of gas technology, which is actually more cleaner than PMS. So I think advocacy groups are very important. NGOs are very important. I also see the role of academia. They're very important. The PCING, which is the Presidential Initiative on CNG, should be looking at trying to partner with those folks. I also see professional institutions like the safety institutions. I also see professional institutions like the the Nigerian Society of Engineers. They all form a part of those that could really create the advocacy so that we can have a wider penetration rate. Because I think there's a lot of militating factors. Funding is one, infrastructure is the other, just even the willingness to adapt this technology because of the inertia change that we normally have, and then the whole ambiguity and obscurity around the safety aspect of adapting new technology.
You know, inertia is one major topic that we could spend hours dissecting, but let's not even do that right now. Earlier, you talked about affordability and accessibility. Let's talk about that a little bit. How can energy efficiency measures be made affordable and accessible to low-income communities?
Well, I think one of the key things that we need to do in those aspects is government needs to come in and subsidize not the energy itself, but subsidize the production that leads to that energy.
Could you explain?
So things like the setup of those facilities, we need to start giving, providing subsidies like, production subsidies in form of tax credits to people that are coming in there with the hope that when they produce the energy itself, or maybe even the fuel that contains the energy, they can provide a cheaper price on that. We can also provide lower tariffs on imports of equipment that has to do with the alternative forms of energy. We can also provide funding to allow the upfront costs to be catered for. So, and then of course, we could also think about decentralized solutions. I think the biggest challenge that we have with developing some of the rural areas is the fact that we are always fixated on centralized energy solutions. And what about the areas that are not tied to the central grid? We need to start thinking about a framework to decentralize and create various energy hubs or grids that would feed those communities. And I'll tell you one of the things that that started out much earlier before now, but that has in the country. I'll start an example in my state, but has since not been taken as strong as it was before. I'll give you context. In Ibno, which is in Akwa Ibom State, and also Ikodabasi, we have two companies. One is Mobil Producing, which is a subsidiary at the time of ExxonMobil.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have, Ascon, which was in the Ecolabasi then. Now, what used to happen is that those companies produce energy, and as part of their CSR, they created a decentralized grid that were able to circulate energy around that vicinity, right? Yes, and that really worked, and that's some of the dividends of having, industrialization, because those companies typically would produce energy based on their, sort of worst case scenario energy demand, but maybe it never gets that far. And they say, okay, look, instead of just wasting the residual energy, let's send it to these communities. After all, how much do they want? Now, let me tell you the knock-on effects on that. A lot of people, even people that were not living close there, people that had to commute 45 minutes to work if they lived there, actually moved to those areas, citing the constant availability of electricity. So, just telling us that if you look at the interwovenness of the economics, it's not just let's solve this, how do we do this? It's about, what is the opportunity cost of not doing certain things, and what's the opportunity cost of not taking an integrated view of the economy?
Yeah,
that's the critical thing, because if we have continued that pace of development and had, let's say, one industry per local government, for example, all over the country, or even in Akwa Ibom State, what would have had is that those countries would have created decentralized grid solutions that would then be a case of trying to put out the distribution network that would supply that vicinity. So nobody will be talking about the central grid itself. So there's a place of industrialization in all of this, because with the fact that energy efficiency or the adaptation of more efficient energy means it is much cleaner fuel. It is also much cheaper in running. Companies are going to run that. Most companies that set up today for industrial production are going to be running on gas. And when they have gas turbines, they will have excess energy for the most part, and they can distribute it across those villages that don't require so much. So I think Nigeria needs to look at the energy problem not as an isolated problem, but the energy problem needs to be looked at as part of or subset of the industrialization problem that we haven't been able to achieve and that we need to achieve very urgently.
That's a very good answer. We'll take a breather so that I can let you have a cup of water, though. But when we come back, I'm going to be putting this to you. You talked about regulations earlier on. So I'm going to be asking what policies or regulations you think are critical for promoting energy efficiency. Also, I'm going to be asking what role energy audits play in identifying and addressing energy waste in the country. And lastly, I'm going to be asking you to make recommendations as regards leveraging renewable energy sources to enhance energy efficiency. Is that okay, Doctor?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Get ready into the heart of action. Welcome to Sport Hub, where passion meets unparalleled excitement.
What a goal! Can the MMA champion!
Get set for the adrenaline rush of a lifetime as we bring to you the biggest stories, interviews, and the most thrilling moment from the world of sport. No matter what your favorite sport is, we've got you covered. From football to basketball, tennis, boxing, Formula One, and everything in between. We bring you the best from around the globe. Join us every Monday, 11 a.m. to 12 noon. Wednesday and Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on High Impact Television on Nicontat 42 Degree East. Heart of Action.
High Impact Radio, 102.1 FM. The future is now.
Welcome back. The show is on record, where every word matters. Is happening right here. High Impact 102.1 FM, which, by the way, is true. We're still in the spirit of celebration. Now, the topic of discussion today is energy efficiency awareness in Nigeria. We are focusing on steps towards sustainability. And my guest analyst, like I said earlier on, is a very, very renowned expert in this field. He is Dr. Wisdom Enang, Senior Energy Consultant and Analyst. Doctor, thank you so much. You're very gracious, by the way. Thank you for always honoring our invitation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. So I was going to ask, what policies or regulations are critical for promoting energy efficiency in the industrial sector as it relates to Nigeria?
All right. So I think the first thing I want to say is I'm going to bring, for example, the flaring, regulations, and then I'm going to relate it to the energy sector. For a while, Nigeria tried to use a punitive approach to flaring, to stop flaring. And so that's why you had a lot of flare penalties that were put on there. But there's only a limit to which it was, because the thing is, the more you put flare penalties, in reality, the businesses will just price in the effect of those flare penalties as part of their business cost, declare that as part of the operational cost, and move on.
Yeah.
Because they don't flinch. So what happens is, at the end of the day, that is very limited. And unless you create a commercial framework to incentivize the reduction in flare, meaning they can make money from stopping that, which is what the flare commercialization superimposed to this conversation.
Yeah,
you have the government increasing the price of PMS and trying to create a gravitational pull where people feel, woof, PMS is so expensive, let's run to CNG because of that, for example. But without the infrastructure, there is so much that can do, because people turn around and say, well, we can't find the fuel anyway, so we'll stick to the PMS, but probably we'll just use it. It's not just to put primitive actions on the other fuels and make that cheaper. You have to create the right physical incentives for people to come in and help you solve the other tenets of energy. So you have the affordability solved, obviously. But what about the availability and the accessibility? People need to come into that value chain and build it up. So you need to be able to create that commercial, physical incentive for them to come out and build it.
That's a very...
The second thing is that when
Yeah, go ahead.
The second thing is that when you're talking about the adaptation of energy itself, think about a scenario where the government says, look, we have a certain quota that we've worked, and if companies can meet that quota to onboard their staff onto any form of alternative energy, either in their home, either in for their vehicular applications, we are going to give certain tax credits to these companies. And what the company needs to do is to say, okay, look, one of the scenarios could be for you to convert your car, all employees, if you want to convert your car to CNG, for example, we're going to help you to do that by matching half of the amount that is required towards the conversion, provided you have the other half to match. So say if it's 1 million required, you bring 500, the employer brings 500. And then what the employer could say, the 500 that you have to bring, I can give it to you upfront, and you will amortize out of your salary or be taken out of your salary over a year's period, for example. That's the possibility. Then the government says that if you can meet this quota, for every company that can meet it, we're going to give you some rebate off your taxes. I think those are commercially driven ways to stimulate the market.
Yeah.
It's not just enough to say, let the price of PMS be... let me tell you, even if the price of PMS is high, these companies will say, okay, look, guys, park your vehicles, withdraw any transportation allowance we used to give to you, we'll put a bus, and the bus will come down to your facilities and pick you up. So there's still... it's not still going to solve the problem. There's still a lot of ways that problem could be, there could be some circumvention of the problem. And so I always call for the use of commercial incentives, projects that survive and thrive, regardless of the administrations, do so on the back of legislation. The NLNG project today is a success because it is legislated. And every person coming to invest there knows, look, the law backs it, the full provisions of the law on this, and it means that regardless of whoever comes in tomorrow, I have nothing to worry about. regardless of their party. That's why it's a very fantastic success. So we don't have a domestic gas to consume, and that's why we're in this non-industrialized position. But we have a lot to export, and it's very highly profitable, contributing a lot to the GDP because the NLNG has legislative backing. And so I think that should be the way we should go. Every project that is going to be a very critical project should have legislative backing.
Yeah.
We should be able to say, oh, put it there, and then investors know when they're coming in, this is exactly how, they are being protected. And to underscore the point advantage, if you're the second mover, find out what is going to be your advantage. How are you going to leverage on the mistakes of the first mover and correct all of that, put the right imperatives, and still create a gravitational pull? You cannot be a second mover and try to act like a first mover. It doesn't just work. So Nigeria needs to understand that it is playing catch up as far as the energy efficiency and energy transition conversation is being held. It's playing catch up. And the only way it can do so is to study the imperatives and see exactly what they can deploy. It's not just going to be raising the prices. There's going to be a lot of things to stimulate you. Raising the prices of one fuel and making the other fuel more affordable, it's all about solving affordability. But what about on a tripod stand that has affordability, availability, and accessibility? I mean, if you only solve one, it doesn't make the tripod to stand. Tripod needs 3 legs.
Yes.
So you need to solve the other 2 for it to stand.
Absolutely. That is very illuminating. We are wrapping this up at 9:45, but I'd like to squeeze in 2 questions before we do that. So quickly, Doctor, what role do you think energy audits play in identifying and addressing energy waste in Nigeria? Before we quickly talk about renewable energy.
Energy audits are very important because it tells us, if I look at the map and that map has macro audits of the energy utilization, then we'll know which of those areas that we'll have to call mini grid, or we have to create off-grid solutions, because they are not what, if you look at the energy demand there and the cost of just taking the centralized grid solution there, it's too expensive for the energy needs there. So energy audit allows you to be able to plan your investments, to plan your infrastructure, to serve the needs, and then of course plan for the expansion without necessarily putting too much cost towards an investment that obviously shouldn't be so. So there's a number of things that audit will do. It helps for planning. It also helps in terms of even looking at what sort of infrastructure upgrades you're looking at. Because if you have an equipment about 15 years old and it's having to be used at almost 100% capacity because of the energy demand, you obviously know that you need to start planning for the replacement of that equipment.
Yeah, I know. An example is like the grid collapse we're always having in Nigeria.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you have an equipment that is very, very high capacity, but it's serving just a very small set of people, you know that you can plan to take that to where it is required better and then bring a smaller equipment there. So everything starts with data.
Yes.
But not just getting the data, but mining, creating trends, and consuming the data creates an informed decision that then fits into our policy design.
That's a very good answer. Finally, in 30 seconds, Doctor, how can Nigeria then leverage renewable energy sources to enhance energy efficiency across different sectors?
Very, very short one. We just need to use renewables as a complementary form of energy and not a competing form of energy. By complementary simply means that we are using it to solve the energy solutions challenges for decentralized grid areas. Those are the key ones. And by doing so, we're not only using it to solve challenges across the decentralized areas that are not without much access to the central grid, but we are also engendering the stimulation of green industries, which is really critical for Nigeria's industrialization.
That's beautiful. Use renewable energy to complement and not to compete with the central grid system. Thank you, Doctor. That was the most brilliant one. We appreciate you as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian, and do enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. You too. All right, that was Dr. Wisdom Enang, and we'll be talking about energy efficiency awareness in Nigeria. The focus was steps towards sustainability. Dr. Wisdom Enang, by the way, is a senior energy consultant and analyst. This is where we get to call it wraps. Big thanks